Oh, hi. I'm live. I guess I'll roll the intro. Just a moment. Hello. Let me double check, make sure everything's working here. Video looks fine. Audio is the proper microphone. It's coming through. Okay. All right. I'm live. It's Friday night, April 4th, 2025. It's Sine Die Day, CNADA, the final day of the 2025 legislative session. That's the kind of the fun part about having a part-time legislature is they come in to the Capitol, they do their work, and then they go home. And for the rest of the year, they're just, they're still state legislators, obviously, but they're regular folks. It's a very Western idea, a very English idea, American idea, that of the citizen legislature. There's no, some of the folks here have been here a long time, so they are, professionals at this. But at the same time, this isn't anybody's day job. Even the speaker, Mike Moyle, who's been here for 27 years in the legislature, is still a farmer, and he was apparently itching to get back to the farm today. We've got lawyers and teachers and just regular 9-to-5 workers. Some folks who are retired, some folks who are married to people who bring in the bacon, but still, it is a citizen legislature, and today was the final day. I don't have any video clips lined up, and we might or might not have any legislators. I didn't want to bug anybody because this has been the end of a long week, a long 3 months. So if anybody wants, they can come on. Just DM me, PM me, message me, signal me, text me, whatever, and I will send you a link to join. But if not, we'll just talk a little bit about the session that was today. The big news this week was medical freedom stuff. A couple days ago, April 1st was, what day was that? It was Tuesday. I wrote an article about the status of the medical freedom bills. As you know, the governor vetoed Senate Bill 1023. Now, looking back over the history of Governor Little's tenure, he's vetoed at least one bill every year. And so I knew he was going to veto something this year. He's just got to veto something, remind the legislature that there's a governor out there. Governor Otter, his predecessor, 1 year vetoed 25 bills in a kind of a power struggle over transportation funding, where he just said, I'm going to veto everything you send me until you do what I want. But other years, he vetoed none, whereas Governor Little has vetoed at least one thing every year. So this year it was 1023, the Medical Freedom Act, that was sponsored by Senator Dan Foreman and Representative Rob Beiswinger, and it essentially updated the Coronavirus Pause Act. Because remember, 2020, 2021, you have not only the government telling you have to wear masks and you have to stay home and social distance and all that, you started having private businesses say, if you want to continue working here, you have to get the COVID vaccine, which, of course, the COVID vaccine, it's, emergency use, experimental. We don't have the benefit of years of testing to know if it's any good. Also, what about people who are healthy and don't really want to take it? People who are immune compromised and don't want to take it for whatever reason. Anyway, so a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a Coronavirus Pause Act, which was to say, okay, we're not going to be doing this. We're not only is the government not going to be mandating these things, we're not going to let private businesses do it either. And that's something that some Republicans have pushed back on, because obviously Republican conservative philosophy is that we don't want government regulating private business. But at the same time, should we have private business telling somebody who's worked in an office or worked on a factory floor for 20 years, if you want to keep working here, you have to take this experimental injection? You got to draw the line somewhere. Anyway, and the legislature decided to do that. The governor vetoed it. This was a couple of years ago. And so they came back the next year, and they made one that was a little more narrowly tailored, and that one passed, and the governor signed it. Well, this year, Senator Foreman came in, and he wanted to update the Coronavirus Pause Act to become the Medical Freedom Act. So it's not just COVID shots, but it's any shot. It's any medical intervention. So you can't have your boss telling you that if you want to continue working here, you have to go get something done, whether it's an injection, a vaccine, or nose job, or some sort of medication. But it The governor vetoed it, saying that he was worried it would stop schools from being able to send home children who are sick. And it was funny, the day that the veto happened, I had to go pick up one of my children who was sick. He's okay now, just had a stomach ache for some reason. I don't think the bill actually would have stopped that, but again, the governor was going to veto something. So this is a question of strategy. What do you do now? Say you're somebody with Health Freedom Idaho. Say you're an activist. Say you're Senator Foreman or Representative Beiswinger. What do you do now? You still want this to pass, and you only have a week left in the session. So what do you do? And there were two different answers. Senator Foreman drafted a new bill that he said was drafted in conjunction with the governor's office, but it had some odd stuff in it, like a complete carve out for daycares, saying that daycares don't have to abide by anything in this bill, which was a little bit weird. And then Representative Beiswinger, he didn't like that, so he went and drafted his own, which was essentially the exact same text as Senate Bill 1023, but explicitly saying this, schools could still send home sick children. And then they both went through their committees. The reaction of a lot of the folks was a little bit hyperbolic, I'd say. Senator Foreman was accused of betrayal, becoming a traitor, throwing children under the bus. I'm not sure that was helpful. But he did continue working on it. Representative Beiswinger kept working on it. Representative Tanner joined with Beiswinger to push it through. The House passed what became House Bill 472, and the Senate passed Senate Bill 1210 with amendments. They took out that weird exception for daycares. So the Senate ended up with both bills on their side. The House had already passed it, and the Senate had passed it out of committee, so they're both over on the Senate side of the rotunda. And here's where I think a little bit of, I don't know, maybe ego comes into play. The Senate would rather do its own bill than pass the House version. So the Senate ended up passing it, and now they've crossed over. So now you have the House bill is over in the Senate bill's over in the House, but it seems pretty clear that the Senate's not going to hear the House bill. So your only choice at this point is the Senate bill. And this is where you just have to be really flexible in this world, especially in the last week of the session. If you want to get something done, I'm not saying morally flexible, I'm saying strategically flexible, and being able to figure out what do you need to do to get this passed. At this point, 472 is not going anywhere. The Senate's not going to hear it, period. Okay, just put that out of your mind. What next? Okay, 1210 is our bill. How do you make that bill palatable? And Representative Beiswinger, Representative Tanner, they worked with Senator Foreman, worked with the governor's office, worked with leadership on both sides, and they created a bill, or they had that bill, and they created some minor amendments that made it much more palatable to some of the health freedom folks. And that's where today's adventure began. That bill, or the bill that was passed by the Senate, was heard in House State Affairs, sent over to the amending order. The House amended it, voted on the amended bill, sent it back over to the Senate. Senate voted on that, and it was passed, sent to the governor, and signed. So it is law. Senate Bill 1210 was signed by the governor about 3 hours ago, 3.5 hours ago. And so it will be the law of the land, and we'll see what happens next. This morning on the Idaho Signal Show with Matt Edwards, I was explaining the two approaches that people were taking to this rhetorically. You can either kill this bill and come back and try and make a better one next year if you think it has problems, or you can pass this bill and come back next year and fix any problems it might have. And I think the latter is the better strategy, and I'm glad they went that way, because once you have it in the law, then it's easier to do things with. Then it's easier to adjust. Coming back next year and going through the entire process of trying to get this through the law might have been more difficult. Obviously, the dynamic's going to be different. It's going to be the same people in the legislature, barring any resignations or anything, but it will be an election year, and it makes you wonder what people are going to decide to do. Sometimes here in Idaho, people act more conservatively during election years because they know they're about to go face their Republican primary voters. So that'll be interesting. This is why I need more video clips, so that I can take a moment and sip my tea, take a breath. As always, head on over to gemstatechronicle.com, and I will head there now in just a moment here. There we go. Bam. Gemstatechronicle.com, news and analysis that empowers you to make positive change in Idaho. I rearranged the site over the past couple of weeks. I put this section up on top. It's the 4 most recent stories in kind of a magazine layout, which I think is kind of fun. Maybe draws more attention to things. And then below that are my links to the live streams and to Idaho Insider. I guess I'll take the live streams off because we're done. So there's no reason to go here until next January. But it was a cool thing. I actually used this extensively. I had this tab open on my phone, and I had it constantly open here at my desk. And I was always using this to keep up on what was going on in the session. So I will keep this. It'll still work next year. It's just there's no reason to link to, have a big link on the front page for right now because it's, there's nothing to see. Idaho Insider, though, is still a great thing. I will be updating the legislative branch with, all their new IFF scores. It's a imperfect metric, as everything is, but I think it's still useful. So I'll keep it linked there. We'll see if when we get CPAC scores and IACI scores and all those things, and update those for the 2025 session. But this is again always a great resource. Representative Racer obviously doesn't have any scorecards because this is his first year, but you can see which committees he was on, which term it was. I kind of went back and forth with this. How do I call this? And I ended up going with just the legislative nomenclature. Technically, it's his second term, even though it's really his first term. His predecessor, former Representative Sage Dixon, stepped down. He resigned last summer, and it was after the primary. Cornell Razor had already won the primary and was likely to win the general election to fill Dixon's seat. But when Dixon stepped down to take another job, the governor appointed Razor to that open seat, which it was the logical thing to do since he was going to win it anyway. But because of that, he technically took office in 2024 or summer 2024 during the previous legislature. So it's called his second term. But go figure. Anyway, bio from it's whatever they submit to the legislature. Nice picture that they took this year. Any news that I mentioned him in, and then finally a picture of his district. District 1 is right up there in the top of the Panhandle with Boundary County and most of Bonner County. So yeah, I'll get that updated soon. The next level on here is the most recent press releases and guest editorials. Governor issued a press release talking about what a great session it was. Senator Risch is talking about the border enforcement. So, and then, oh, dang it, this is not showing the ads. I must have it turned off on this browser. Let's tell this. Hold on. There we go. Unblock this page. If you're using an ad blocker, I suggest you unblock this page too. There we go. So we have 3 sponsors this month, and I just want to take just a moment to highlight all 3 of them. Boise Realty Group is Lynn Bradescu. She's quite a force down here in Ada County and Boise. She's in District 19, which is very Democrat, but they've got a lot of hardcore Republicans, conservatives in there. She's got a realty office. If you're buying or selling or doing anything with in that field, give her a call there. Give her a click. Let her know that I sent you. Money Metals Exchange, of course, is an icon. They have the largest precious metals depository west of the Mississippi, right here in my hometown of Eagle. They are your source for buying and selling gold, silver, and other precious metals. And they also do a lot to support conservative causes here in Idaho, and I am very pleased to be one of them. And then finally, this is another endeavor of Lynn Bradescu, and several other people have put together an organization called the Syringa Speaker Series. You ever hear of like the Boise City Club will host a debate or host a speaker, and usually they're left-wing. Well, the Syringa Speaker Series is going to be a conservative version of that. It's not only a way to bring in speakers like this event with Molly Hemingway at the end of this month, it's also just a way to bring conservatives together. It's a gathering point, a networking point for like-minded people in the Treasure Valley. So it's very cool. Go check them out. It opens in the new tab, so you can't see it when on the shared screen. But yeah, those are our sponsors this month. Thank you so much to all of them. And if you're interested in sponsoring the Gem State Chronicle, just give me a call or an email, editor@gemstatechronicle.com, and we will work something out. So yeah, that is gemstatechronicle.com. Here are my 4 articles this week. I missed one on one day just because it was so busy. On Monday, I talked about the governor. This was in the wake of him vetoing Senate Bill 1023. And of course, a lot of conservatives were frustrated, as was I. And they were saying, okay, it is time to primary him. Let's run someone and we'll defeat him. We'll get him out of there. And I kind of poured a little cold water on that, saying that, he hasn't gotten this far by being susceptible to something like that. He's no matter what you think of the governor, and I know a lot of conservatives have been frustrated with him for 5 years now, ever since COVID, ever since that stay-at-home order. He has done enough to maintain his position. If the backlash to the COVID lockdowns in 2022 were not enough to beat him in the primary, then they're not going to be enough in 2026 when we're another 4 years removed. So got a lot of feedback on this. Most people thought this was a good analysis, so I invite you to check it out. I do sort of explain what I think would be the way to win. You need to find somebody who is, let's see, where do I put it here? 3 qualities. Name recognition. You need somebody that people have heard of. I thought Ed Humphreys here of Eagle ran a pretty aggressive campaign in 2022, and he went from 0 to about 11%, which is darn impressive. I don't think I could get 11% in a statewide race. So that was actually an incredible achievement, but he was starting from nothing. Nobody had ever heard of him. And he also got tarred as a vote splitter because the Lieutenant Governor Janice McGinn, was also in that race. So that was a problem. You need somebody that the people already know. You need somebody who has a reputation already. You can't just come from nothing. People talk about Donald Trump. He was the first president in many years to enter the White House without having any prior political experience. But he was a household name. In the 80s and 90s, people knew who Donald Trump was. In the 2000s, he had these, Celebrity Apprentice and The Apprentice TV shows. People knew who he was. He was someone that everybody knew and recognized. And then once he was out there defining his message, then people flocked to that. So you have to have some previous, people have to have knowledge of you. They have to know who you are. And that's why if somebody wants to become governor, maybe they should start lower. Aim a little bit lower first. Go to the legislature. Sit on your county commission or your city council, at least. Governor Little, first of all, he comes from a very famous family. His ancestors have been pasturing sheep in Idaho since before statehood. And so he has that name recognition, his last name. His dad served in the legislature. And he didn't immediately jump to governor. He, ran his business for a long time, and then he was in the state Senate. And then from there, he went to lieutenant governor and served there under Butch Otter for several years, I think for all 3 of his terms. And then he became governor. So he followed that path. Second thing you need is charisma. Is charisma 2? Yeah, charisma is number 2. You need to be able to connect with the people. And going back to President Trump, that's something he has in spades. You just watch how he interacts with people. It's he's unique in that regard. So nobody's ever going to be him, but you have to have that sort of connection. You have to be able to walk into a room and command the attention of anybody, whether it's a friendly room or a hostile room. You need to be able to walk in there and just grab people's attention and say, "Look at me, I am the guy for this job." And that's not everybody has that. Not everybody, even in politics, has that ability. It's been interesting watching this legislative session. I won't name any names, but some people have that just naturally, and others don't. Me, I don't think I naturally have that. Any sense of charisma you might detect is a lot of practice. I'm not saying it's fake. It's I try to be myself, but as a child, as a teenager, even as a young adult, I was a terrible public speaker. I would walk into a room in front of people and just completely freeze up and blank out and be trembling. I still tremble a little bit walking up to testify in committees. Although the very last one I did, one of the chicken bills, I felt comfortable. So, you need somebody with charisma. Ed Humphreys, again, to use the 2022 example, was great at that. He was fantastic. He could walk into a room and you really feel the connection. Which is probably why Governor Little declined to do any debates. And finally, you have to have the ability to raise a couple $1 million at a moment's notice. And people hate that, but that's just part of politics. You need money. In fact, there are 3 things you need in politics to win campaigns. It's money, money, and money. Money isn't everything, And the person who raises the most isn't always going to win, but you still need money in order to get your message out, especially running a statewide campaign. Governor Little raised, $2.5 million during the 2022 election cycle. So you need at least that much, if not double, in order to be able to counter that messaging. And then you need a bunch of PACs on board to go attack your opponent and pump you up. But really, those are the three main things you have. So when you're trying to think of who could possibly primary the governor, think, okay, who has name recognition already, who's charismatic, and who can raise $5 million? There's a handful of people in Idaho who I think could do it. I don't think they want to do it. I know that the Attorney General obviously faced Governor Little in the 2018 primary and came very close to winning. But sounds, from what I hear, is looking to stay there at least a second term. And he told me as much way back during the first campaign, that he might take 2 terms to do what he wants to do in the Attorney General's office. Who else? I mean, a lot of conservatives, after the governor vetoed 1023, wanted Dr. Ryan Cole to run. And I love Dr. Cole. He's brilliant and, incredibly, strong on principles and morals and his beliefs. And he's, super intelligent, obviously, super smart, is very charismatic if you ever listen to him talk. But outside of Boise, how many people, the conservative bubble knows him. Outside of that, how many do? And that's the thing. You want somebody who is a solid conservative, somebody who is very strong on their principles and their beliefs, somebody who will enact conservative policy. But in order to get them into office, they have to appeal to a majority of Idaho Republican voters. And that's the hard part. You need somebody conservative enough to satisfy, your litmus test for who a good candidate is, but you need somebody who is able to moderate themselves, or at least moderate their tone enough to win the approval of a majority of voters. Governor Little, like him or not, has a strong base with the middle chunk of the Republican Party, middle to left, I guess. Even some Democrats will vote for him. I'll bet a lot of Democrats voted for him in 2022 for fear of Ammon Bundy getting into the governor's office. So anyway, I've talked way too long about this, but it's an interesting idea. One of the things I want to really continue pushing is trying to elevate the level of discourse, elevate the level of strategy. It's not enough to just, every time somebody does something you don't like, to say, okay, well, I'm gonna support a primary against you. Everybody was doing that against Senator Risch and Senator Crapo back in January, when they didn't support Rick Scott of Florida as Senate Majority Leader. It's like, after having watched this for many years, I know that most of those people are going to have forgotten that in a week. People have short attention spans. People have real lives they have to get to. They got jobs, they got families, and they got hobbies, and they may feel momentary outrage at something they read in the news, but then it moves on. So how do you actually mount a sustained campaign against a well-entrenched, well-funded incumbent? That's the question. And I don't want to be a complete wet blanket here, but I kind of am. I just want us to be realistic. And the reason for that is down here at the bottom here. There we go. Yeah, the second to last paragraph. Why should we be realistic? It's because money and resources are finite. And if we have finite resources, how we deploy them, how we move them around is it's important. You look at some of the other races in the 2022 Republican primary. Priscilla Giddings came within 10% of defeating Scott Bedke for lieutenant governor. Brandon Durst came within less than 6% of winning state superintendent. And Dorothy Moon, now the current Idaho GOP chair, she came within 2% of winning the race for Secretary of State. If you'd taken some of the money that had been raised in the governor's race and distributed it to those races instead, could things have been different? Probably. I mean, you never know. So it looks like we do have a legislator who is wanting to join, so I'm going to send him a link here. If I can find the link, where is it? There it is, copy invite link, right in front of my face. So that was just one article there. All right, like I said, I wrote 4 this week. Just do a quick overview here. Last Chance for Health Freedom. That's kind of where the health freedom bills were at the time. Good Intentions. Yesterday it was just kind of one of those higher level philosophical things I was thinking about, how, leftists, they boast about their compassion, but they often make things worse, in my opinion. And their compassion is usually directed outside instead of toward the people closest to them. Hold on. I'm still working on sending this. Nope, that doesn't go there. It goes there. Pardon me a moment. It'll be worth it, though, once I get my guest on here. No subject. That's fine. I will send anyway. All right, so we'll wait for him to come up, and then finally today I wrote about the events of today and how those medical freedom bills went through the process, and how also the DEI bill, which did pass and was signed. Lauren's asking if I read Lenny's newsletter. And the answer is yes. Senator Brian Lenny has a Substack, and he posted a newsletter today just explaining some things he's learned in politics. He came in his first term, 2023, as one of those bomb throwers, take no prisoners, no compromises, and he kind of got stymied. I think I mentioned this on last week's show, and he comes in this year with I think more of a plan, and it paid off because he came in and was able to get a lot of legislation passed that he was not able to do before. So I think there's a lesson there. We're going to have Representative Chris Bruce with us in just a moment, once he gets his camera up. Representative Bruce obviously is from District 23. District 23 is south and west of me. South and west of the Treasure Valley. It's Owyhee County and a little chunk of Ada County and a little chunk of Canyon County. Very rural. I was out in Owyhee County a couple weeks ago speaking to the High Desert Republican Women's Club. It's a lot of pasture, farmland out there. Just a lot of empty space, which is nice to get to sometimes. Representative Bruce also sits on the Kuna City Council. So I'm still waiting for him to get his camera fixed there. I'll give him a moment there. So yeah, go to gemstatechronicle.com and check out the latest articles. Today was was sine die, the final day of the session. The legislature has adjourned. They will not come back until January unless there's an emergency that requires a special session. And it was actually a lot less chaotic than this year. It was last year. It was kind of chaotic. JFAC was still meeting on the last day because they were still killing budget bills, and there was this power struggle with the former pro tem Chuck Winder trying to deal with that sale of the Idaho Transportation Department building on State Street in Boise. This year was a little calmer. It was just a lot of kind of waiting for the process to move. So I'm going to bring Representative Bruce here on in. There we go. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, how's it going?
Great. It's great to finally have you there. I'm been trying to bring you on for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been kind of wild towards the end.
So I don't know where to start. Do you want to talk about your overall impression? I know the governor signed one of your bills today.
Yeah, and that one was that 6 or 1? Yeah,
6 was. I know it was signed today.
Yeah, so that one we passed that out of the House probably the second week of January, and maybe the third week of January, and so it sat over on the 14th order forever. So we went back and forth with the pro tem, and finally came to an agreement of what we wanted to add to it. So it was nice to finally get that back, because you hear that if it goes to the 14th order, it doesn't make it out. So.
So remind us exactly what that bill does and why it was important.
So it expands the Attorney General's powers to be able to investigate city elected officials. So some of the parts of the east side of Idaho, you have instances where someone's come forward, and if you go and complain to the police chief, they can do their investigation, or they refer to the prosecutor. Well, sometimes, you've got the police chief that works under the council and mayor, and then you have the prosecutor who contracts with usually the cities. So sometimes you'll have a whistleblower come forward, and they just their complaint never sees the light of day. So this way, they'll actually be able to go on and file a complaint with the AG's office. If they deem it to be credible, then they'll go and check it out.
It sounds like one of those things that's reasonable, but I remember it was introduced last year as well, and it never actually made it through the process. It's
you have some, and I get their concerns. They don't want an AG who's going to be out looking for things. So we're looking for it to be more reactive and not proactive. And I think that was the argument with the conversation is, hey, we may have a good AG now, but what happens if it gets replaced and then you have someone out who's searching for things to find? So, and then the amendment that came from the Senate just says that they don't have they can't do it all by themselves, right? You can't come in and shut out the local prosecutor. So they can't have complete jurisdiction of it by itself. So, it was a friendly amendment. We were happy to get it through and happy to get it signed. So that was good.
Did you get to have a signing ceremony where you got pictures taken next to the governor, or is that only for certain bills?
I didn't have a signing ceremony for anything, but it was okay. I think I got, I requested one to be a, what do they call it? A commemorative or they sign it and then have all their signatures from the speaker and the pro tem and, or not the pro tem, but the lieutenant governor and the governor. But I guess he got a lot of requests, so they got stacked up. So I never got it back. So I got one that has the speakers and the lieutenant governors, and we just cut the governors off the bottom. So that was on 149, which was the mortgage bill.
Yeah, I was going to mention that one. That was another one that went through. That's it didn't get as much fanfare as say school choice or DEI, but it was I think still another reasonable bill. What did that one do?
So that actually it made national news, which was kind of good. It just requires mortgage trigger leads right now are a hassle. If you go out and buy a home, you get inundated with phone calls. The problem is as soon as they issue your credit, the credit companies package up your data into what's called a mortgage trigger lead. And then they sell it to all the consumers to try to solicit you. The problem is people get confused, not just the older people, but also younger ones. And so you have a ton of lenders call in. They think it's either their lender, their processor that's working with them. They already have a good bit of your info, the last 4 of your social, what you're looking to do. So some people end up having their credit pulled again, fill out another mortgage application. So it can have a detrimental effect depending on how many times they do it or what they do. So it was more to protect consumers, give them more privacy over their data. This way it says if you do buy a mortgage trigger lead, when you do make that call, you have to say, I'm not with your current lender who's issued your credit and I purchased this lead. And that'll clear up a lot of confusion at the front. So you can't go in and ban it all the way because it's grandfathered in with the Fair Credit Reporting Act at the federal level. And so we can't just go in and ban it. And they have passed legislation at the federal level. I think it's passed the Senate, but it hasn't been taken up in the House. And so we're one of like 7 states that have done it. I think Texas did it last year. But it just seems reasonable that you disclose who you are when you call somebody, especially if you've already got part of their information.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that, had you asked me for a wish list of my top 100 laws, I probably wouldn't have come to that because I never would have thought of that. But then once it's pointed out, it's like, oh, yeah, that's kind of obvious.
Yeah, and it wasn't even on the top of my radar. But, obviously I'm a mortgage banker. So in the circles that I travel, you always hear the complaints. And even with borrowers who have gone down that path and almost lost their chance to buy a house because they filled out other loan applications, because they do a soft pull at the end and they can tell if you've issued any other credit to people or applied for it. So, it just makes sense. It wasn't, so shiny. They got a lot of attention, but it was something I think that is important. The other one that I did was the workers' comp. I think it was 64. House Bill 64. So with workers' comp, you have LLCs, and a lot of them will have different members. And within that LLC, you're supposed to have workers' compensation insurance, but the members would say, oh, they're supposed to have it, or he's supposed to have it, and end up with no one that has it. So the worker gets left out when they get injured. This would just require that whoever's within the LLC, all the members are required to have it. If one, so that way at least somebody has workers' compensation insurance to protect the worker.
Another one that, unless, I guess that's why it's important, for lawmakers to listen to your constituents, because they're the, often the ones running into these issues and sitting around thinking, okay, why isn't there a law for this? Well, if you talk to your legislator, you can make a law for it.
Yeah, I think the wildest one is I took on one with, they do a lot of agency bills, especially the new people. All the agencies, you got to fight them off. They want to do a lot of things, and you kind of look at what fits your pain tolerance, I think you would say. What can you work through? So I worked on one which was House Bill 9, which was an update to the Office of Administrative Hearings. And man, it was a rabbit hole I got down. I didn't realize that we would have so much community input in it. But Office of Administrative Hearings deals with any court battle or judicial issue that you weren't satisfied with. And so a lot of people had input. I've got so many calls from constituents, and they had certain problems with it. We took their input, and we actually changed the way the agency wanted to write it, put their information into it. So I would say that the community had a really good input on passing that law. So
that sounds like the way the legislative process is supposed to work. You take input. From not only the
I think the funniest thing was I got a call from a gentleman, and we don't have any staff, and he goes, he said, well, where does the representative stand on this? And I was like, well, he supports it. And he goes, well, where does he stand on this? I'm like, sir, he supports that. He goes, well, how the hell do you know? I said, sir, you're talking to the representative. He's like, oh, I thought you were the staff. So he was very cordial after that, but he was all fired up in the beginning. So, just things like that kind of take the monotony out of it, which was kind of a break. But you always think that they get up there and there's not a lot going on. What do your representatives really do? What do they do at the Capitol? But it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. A lot more than I ever thought it was going to be. So plus reading, you get there, if you get there at 6 a.m, you don't leave till 6, 7 at night. And then you come home and you pull a stack of bills out of your backpack or whatever. And then you're reading those until you fall asleep. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's technically a part-time job, but it really is kind of a full-year job squeezed into 3 months.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think we had a good freshman class overall. A lot of different ideas, a lot of different personalities. So I think it was good. And I mean, we were able to give back over $400 million in tax cuts. A lot of the budget items that some agencies want, we're able to cut back. Now, we didn't. I would have liked to have seen a little more cut out, but it's the process. And I can tell you, JFAC works their behinds off.
Oh yeah, I know that. They're there very early in the morning, and they're the only committee that meets every single day, rain or shine.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. Plus, it's good to get input from them. Luckily, I have opportunities to go through budgets at the city level and with what I do, with finance anyway. So it wasn't as hard for me to catch on as some other folks, but I think we all, worked well as a team. So we didn't get everything we wanted done, but I think we had a pretty good year overall.
I agree. What was it like working with your District 23 seatmates? You had Representative Dygert is obviously another freshman, but then you have Senator Leahy, who's been there a long time. Did the three of you ever work together or talk together or go to town halls together, or was it just?
Yeah, we did a couple of town halls. One out in Marsing, and then one out in one was in Melba at our District 23 meeting. So those were the only ones. We didn't have one here locally in Kuna. I'm assuming we'll have a kind of a roundup one coming up soon. They both were on the. So I have the constitutional defense bill that hasn't been signed yet, which is an update to allow ranchers and farmers who are being sued, a citizen or a rancher or farmer being sued by the federal government, to come before the Constitutional Defense Council. And they can essentially appeal to the state to get involved. And they can either hire a private attorney or the AG can pick that up and argue the federal government for them. And it's for water and grazing rights. That one's been there since the 2nd. It hasn't been signed yet. But, we had an issue out in our district with the Nettletons and the Lowrys that happened years and years ago, where our former AG was on the side of the federal government. And they ended up just, it's 148 is the bill number. And so you had, the federal government was suing them for groundwater rights, stockwater rights. And so they said, well, we're not going to do what you ask. We're going to fight you. And they took it all the way to court and won. And they've been trying to get paid back from the state for a long time. Now, this bill wouldn't pay them back, but it would set up for future instances like that. And if you read the language, there's certain criteria. It's not just anyone that can apply and then the state pays for a private attorney. It has to protect Idaho's sovereignty. It has to, a good amount of the citizens have to benefit from it. So there's definitely criteria that has to be met. And it really, I think things like that, when the federal government comes in, part of the time they'll just bankrupt you, right? They've got unlimited amount of attorneys and money to spend. And so it's to protect the folks who really can't go to court and battle it out, but it's protecting Idaho's water rights. So I started that bill. Dygert signed on as a co-sponsor, and then Todd Lakey picked it up and ran it through the Senate.
That's cool.
And so kind of all three of us in the district got involved with that one.
Yeah, well, that's one you'll be able to go back and share to your constituents.
Yeah, I looked at it earlier. It had a 0 where it said signed. I don't know if that was a typo or same thing. But either way, but getting a lot of the stuff through the body too. The blood bill, which was interesting. I didn't realize that we had such a I don't know, how would you say it? Maybe a blood mafia that came out against it. For lack of better words,
the blood lobbyist for sure.
The blood lobbyist. So that was an interesting bill. When you get your highs and lows all in the same time, I mean, it was a good experience. We have the directed donation bill, which was House Bill 400 that I introduced in Health and Welfare. Just had an introduction hearing, and that'll come back next year. Utah had the same bill. It died on their floor because they're set at 75 days. So at 75 days, their legislative session ends. So whatever's on the calendars is done, from my understanding. And so they had that bill, which oddly enough was House Bill 400 in Utah. So I didn't introduce ours until months later, and it was House Bill 400. So
that's funny.
It was kismet.
So yeah, that's. I thought it was a good session, but obviously we didn't get everything. But that's that's one of those things that you can now work on over the next few months. Share with some folks, make sure it gets build a coalition that can carry it through.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have somebody on the Senate side that has the same passion for the issue. Mm-hmm. I was working through all the stuff that was important to my constituents on our side, and we hit the committees and hit the House, and it was gone. And it's like, oh, it's only halfway done. Yeah. Or a third of the way done. And so finding someone on that side that has the same passion about the issue, who's going to pick it up and carry it. The mortgage one was good because Senator Lenny actually carried that in the Senate. House Bill 149. So that was good. He picked it up and carried it through the Senate, and we were able to work together on that one. So, but you've been busy up there.
Well, I like to come down now and then and see how y'all are doing. Even when I'm not there, I'm here in my home office, and I've got all the different committees on the screens, House and Senate. So
Yeah, this week was a lot. We had, everything that was going on in the House, battling with the Senate, the governor signing or not signing stuff. And then we ended up, council was a lot on Tuesday. I left the House floor and went right to council. And we didn't get out of there till about 11. We had 3 hours of testimony against a data center rezoning for, a new data center, which went down it passed on a 3-2 vote. The mayor broke in favor. So that was an interesting time hearing from those folks as well. And, having that experience at the city level helps you to understand a lot more with what you're doing at the state level. But that's one of the bills that died on the Senate side as soon as we adjourned, was House Bill 315, which would have sunset the sales tax exemption on data centers.
Oh, that's right.
So that was the other one. It was on the 14th order, and it would have set it at 7 years. Currently, data centers pay no sales tax on the material that they buy to build the place. They don't pay any sales tax on the equipment they put in it. So, and then if they have a facility that's over $1 billion, they pay $400 million on it. And so, obviously, they work out a deal with their power as well. So, those things have implications for people, the whole state. It's not just the municipality. So, and it was interesting to work with John Gannon on that. He's an interesting fellow.
Yeah, I've had a few opportunities to have conversations, and he's obviously, he does care about the property tax issue, especially of these big data centers and big corporations.
Yeah, I told him I thought he might be conservative in another life.
Well, I don't know. There's been some interesting crossovers. I like to say, if you told somebody 20 years ago that Robert Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard were in the White House, they'd say, "Oh, the Democrats must have won."
Yeah.
That one, nobody really picked it up and ran with it on the Senate. And going back to what you were saying about needing to find someone on the other side who's just as passionate.
Well, I think there was a lot more to that. There was so to get it through the House, you had. There were certain timelines that you could work with, right? What was the good exemption? Was it 7 years? Was it 10? There were people that wanted to cut it off immediately. We landed on 7 years. We thought that's enough for you to build out the facility. And like I said in committee, it spurs economic value to come here, but it tells you that we're not going to give away the farm for you to stay. We're not as competitive as other states if we do that. Some states are 10 years, some are 15. But at the same time, we are a desert, and they do consume a lot of water. So, I'm not opposed to businesses coming here, but I think we're not giving mom and pop discounts like that, right? They may not be bringing billions of dollars, but we're not giving them the same type of tax breaks. And
right.
With the amount of employees they bring, which is 100 after it's all said and done, now you'll have a lot of build out, but and a lot of the company work that they're bringing in are workers or companies that they're bringing in from out of state. So, it's just something we should look at as a whole, and have a lot of dialogue on it. But it was good. Even our office area there was good. We had good people in our office. We had Vishnevsky and Alfieri, Scott, Redmond. So our little portal, Kaler, Levitt, Healy. So that was a good group of folks to be around and some to learn from, and even leadership did well this year. I mean, seeing the stuff they deal with, it's not a job I want. I'm just trying to figure out which hall to go through to duck lobbyists. And so they did well as well. So. But yeah, do you have any other questions? Or sorry, I'm in my baseball gear. I went right from the house after we adjourned, came home, changed, and then went to my son's baseball game.
Oh, well, that's that sounds like a lot of fun. More fun than sitting in the Capitol today. I mean, I enjoy kind of the pageantry of it and the formality and going through the motions. But for y'all, it must have been a lot of just sitting and waiting for things to happen.
Well, it was good to see the process, right? Because we really. Towards the end, you don't see it all, and the staff there was amazing. I mean, I cannot talk enough about them. Not only the clerk, but the folks who worked for her, all of the secretaries and the chairman. I mean, they all do a lot, and we were really blessed to have all of them. Sometimes you may see everything good that we do, but I tell you the staff behind us did way more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I don't want to keep you all night. It's you finally get to go home and relax now. What's next for you? What are you going to do for the next few months? Just back to work?
Yeah. Finally get back to work and doing, what I enjoy to do. I hope to meet with a good many of the constituents. I think the best part during the session was the phone calls, because you get inundated with emails. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can't even go through them all. But what I was able to do is collate them from my zip codes, punch in what zip codes were mine, and it would collate any emails that came in, put them into a folder. And so I started going back and replying to them, calling them back. So I still have a lot of those to do, probably, a week's worth of calls to make and letters to send and emails and stuff. So I'll probably filter through those as well. I think it's just important. The easiest thing a legislator can do is pick up the phone and call you, or when you call, answer. So whether it's good or bad, I mean, I get everything from, hey, it's great, you're doing great, to, hey, I hate the way you're doing things, but I like your votes. And you get some weird stuff too. You mix in all the other hate mail that comes with it too, for reasons unknown. I think there was a while we were getting emails that said protect Iowa families, get rid of SNAP. And you're like, are they even emailing the right people? So, but it's been a good experience. A lot of great people. I'm really blessed to be able to get up there and represent folks and take what they're dealing with to the Capitol and share their thoughts. Now, I didn't debate a lot. Typically, I go through the bills, kind of read them and judge them and decide where I'm going to vote. Some folks like to talk a lot. Some folks don't. I really only talked if it was necessary. A lot of people do that. A lot of them have their minds made up. Some of the really big ones, it's good to hear people, but I at least like to listen to the debate, because sometimes they may bring ideas that you don't even think about, or ways that things may work. So it's been good. And I look forward to talking with everybody back in my district, seeing what their thoughts were, what they thought we did good, what we didn't, and then go from there. So plus this year, next year coming up, I think a lot of the representatives who got a lot done, they already had RSs ready to roll. So as soon as they gavelled in, they dropped them off at the committees and we're ready to go. So that'll be a big difference from next year. So
yeah, you'll have a year under your belt and ready to hit the ground running next time.
What did you think about the session overall?
I thought it was overall a good session. I'll sit down and go through bill by bill and go through the priorities I set out for what I wanted to see at the beginning of the session. But I have a generally positive feeling. A lot of stuff that we've been waiting for years to get through, like mask mandate prohibitions and school choice, that got through.
Oh yeah.
Even this last week where the governor vetoed the medical freedom, they got back together, found something that works, and got it through. And that's it's good to see that happen.
And they worked their behinds off, man. That was awesome to watch too. From when it was dead, it wasn't dead, it was back. There was amendments, there was 2 bills, there was hostile amendments. I mean, it was interesting. So, and when I was talking to one of the other representatives, I said, "Man, is this how it always is?" They said, "Sometimes at the end of the year, you got 2 or 3 or 4 of these things that are going like this." So we had it pretty easy that we were just dealing with, a couple of bills at the end, with the DEI bill and the medical freedom bill. So, but I think overall, the consensus was good. We had the newspaper one. I don't think made it anywhere.
Yeah.
Where they could advertise online and they didn't have to publish. That was, we spend a lot of money at the state level and also municipalities to do that. And the amount of people that actually pick up the paper and read it it's so little. We continue to help fund those organizations. The other one was the teachers union one. That one didn't make it anywhere. It got out of the House, but ended up in the Senate. So, and that one had mixed reviews. I actually got calls from a lot of teachers who really approved, who like that, who don't say a lot at work, just because it's, they try to just keep, a calm demeanor at work, But we did get the flag bills passed, which was good. That's, and you'll see some people who think it's about one flag. It's about any type of politics. Kids have enough going on without dealing with the political stuff that's going on out of school. So I was glad to see that one. Plus, on government buildings, it's maddening to think that we even have to pass something like that. But it is 2025. So
yeah, and you've got a lot of folks who want to use their positions, even though they're paid by taxpayers and supposed to be, representing a unified view of our society. They want to use their positions to push a very narrow ideology.
Yeah, well, and I think that you're seeing kind of that sway back to where people are finally saying, look, we are, what do they call it? We accept what you do, but stop pushing it onto us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people, for a long time have just said, well, do what you do. We'll just not pay much attention. But now you're finally seeing that swing back where it's like, look, we don't care what you do, but stop forcing it into everything we do. Just the gender bending stuff and the DEI. So we just want to get back to all trying to live life without political leanings being pushed on you in either direction. So,
well, it was 3 months, an intense 3 months, and now you can get back to a bit of a routine maybe. But I appreciate.
Yeah, it was 89 days, right?
89 days. Yeah,
that was a long 89 days.
Not the longest, I think, but maybe the most intense. I don't think I'd have to go back and see if this year set a record for the number of bills. There were over 1,000 bills and resolutions and measures combined.
Oh, wow.
Chambers.
I didn't even know there were that many. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
700, but I probably got that wrong, but it seemed to be a record high.
Well, let's hope that we don't repeat that,
Yeah, well, we've got most of the stuff done, so let's just come back with a couple more things, like E-Verify and some of your bills you mentioned, and get those done.
I'm down. Hey, I appreciate you. You're always having great content.
Yeah, I appreciate you for coming on and being great content, and thanks for all you did this year, and take care.
Yes, I'll come back and we'll chat again after a few months when I'm ready to go back.
Yes, sir.
Have a good night.
You too. All right, thank you to Representative Chris Bruce, one of the freshmen in the legislative session this year. Like he said, it was a pretty solid freshman class. A lot of new folks came in and really made their marks on things. A lot of veterans did as well. One thing that at the beginning of the session I reminded myself of, and I try to keep in mind, is that every one of those 105 people has the same right to be there as anyone else. And everybody gets frustrated with some and champions the others. Sometimes when people vote the wrong way, we want to get angry and go rhetorically hit something. But every single one was elected by their voters in their district. And every single one has as much right to be there as any others, and every single one is accountable to their voters for their votes. And over the next year, obviously, the 2026 primary campaign is going to start spinning up here in just a few weeks. It's crazy, but it's true. The 1 year mark, this May is about the time when candidates start declaring and start raising money, and then it'll go into really overdrive end of this year, early next year. But as that process takes place, we'll evaluate every candidate and see, okay, is this would this position be improved with a new candidate? But at the same time, the ones who are here now, they were all sent there by their voters, and they all have to now go back and account for the way they voted. So, it's been a long week. It's been a long 3 months. I will probably continue this program, maybe not every week, but I'll come bring you information about what's going on. Obviously, there's no elections this year. The session's done. So, I'll maybe be able to focus on some things I haven't been focusing on as much. I did promise my fellow delegates to the State Central Committee that I would focus on that idea of returning to having each county elect one senator instead of the current situation where you have each district elects one senator plus two representatives. That resolution, I actually debated against it at the State Central Committee last January, and had a lot of people thinking I was some crazy liberal for that. Really, it's just on the one hand, you have the Supreme Court's already ruled against it, but that's not always a reason not to support something. On another hand, it would mean 80 counties represented by a single senator. I don't know. That's pretty crazy, it seems to me. But I did promise I would look into the details, look into the numbers, look into the history of it. So that'll be something I'll come out with in a couple of weeks probably. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed at gemstatechronicle.com or gemstate.substack.com if you want to get every daily article in your inbox. Tomorrow I'll have a roundup of this week's news plus other interesting things I've seen and come across this week. So I do appreciate everybody for joining me. It's been an hour. Go enjoy the rest of your Friday evening and have a great weekend.